Well, welcome everyone. So welcome, I hope everyone's good. This is our NSS session for assignment 1, okay, as you would have seen on the pacer. So basically that means this evening I'm going to go over the requirements for your assignment in detail and answer any questions that you have around that. Okay, yeah, does anyone have any, like, first off, maybe general questions they want to ask before I get started? Otherwise, yeah, we'll just take questions as they come up. I would enjoy it if you did put word counts after each question, please. And obviously the word count doesn't count towards the word count. It's just really useful in terms of marking. Alrighty. This date did not change when I updated the slide. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. Ascertain the correct due date. If someone has the Learn open in front of them, would you mind just opening up the pacer? My computer's being a bit slow. Sorry about that. I did edit this slide, but obviously it didn't save for some reason. Sixth of September, thank you so much. Okay, yeah, that does ring a bell. Okay, 6th of September, so I will edit the slide before I share them, okay? 6th of September at the usual 23:59 p.m. The late concession is up to 24 hours late, so you get minus 15% and it is marked, but thereafter the assignment's not graded and you need to go through that whole usual process of applying for whatever you apply for with a ticket when you hand something in late. Okay. All right, so 10% word count limit is per each word count. Yes, so I mean it's a percentage, so it would work out either way. But yeah, so per word count you're given, you'll see per question there's a word count. And so, yeah, if you could please just stick within that 10% at least. Okay, if you go over that 10%, then that means that the words after that line, that deadline there, will not be marked. Okay. Okay, obviously, usual rules, all assignments need to be typed and handed in on Learn and follow APA 7th edition referencing. Okay, please make sure that when you are asked to use extra sources for this assignment that you use credible academic sources. So that is only published books and articles in journals. Okay. All right. Otherwise, the usual academic integrity rules apply. Do remember, in terms of AI, you are allowed to use an editing tool should you wish to, like Grammarly. But you must disclose your use of that tool and provide the prompt sheets, which I know is difficult with something like Grammarly. So it's more that you disclose it, and then should any investigation take place at some point, then you will need to provide the document history of your document so that it can be played back for that. But it's fine. If you're just using it for that, like, spell check kind of function, that's absolutely fine. As soon as you are asking any tool to generate words, that is where the problem comes in. Okay. So basically that's the rule. If you use any kind of editing tool, you may do so, but please make sure to disclose it. And basically you just put a little asterisk before or after your reference list stating which tool you used. Okay. That is the new process, and that is how we're going into it. I'm obviously not going to just flag random things. I would only ever flag it if there's a genuine concern and there's a new, like, cross-working table thing for, like, evidence. But yeah, I would only really flag if there's a genuine concern that large chunks of the assessments are generated by a bot and not your own words. Okay. But yeah, really unlikely to happen, particularly in an assignment like this. You know, it's a case study type thing. It's all application. I'm not sure any kind of bot would be very useful to you with this kind of assignment anyway. Alrighty. Yep, there we go. That's the rules. Are there any questions just on this while I just check the chat? Give me a second. You haven't been able to access the assignment from VC Learn. Okay, does anyone else have an issue with downloading the PDF that I put up? It's right at the bottom of more resources. What's the problem? Does it give you an access message thing? Yeah, so it would appear that the security stuff copies over when you print a PDF now from the Word document. So unfortunately, to access the assignment, you're going to have to log in and then download it from the student materials thing. And it's just that you need to log into your student account to access it. But yeah, if anyone does have it, then please do share it on your guys' group, and then that will obviously make everyone's life a bit easier. Okay. Didn't work either. Yeah, I just really don't understand. At this point, I might just screenshot the thing and put those on more resources. Because I really can't think of any other way to fix this issue of access. Yeah, but will you guys all do me a favor? Everyone that's struggling to access anything on that student materials, make tickets. And then, yeah, if they get flooded with all the tickets, then hopefully they will realize that there is a large problem with their system. Okay. Okay. We're going to talk about additional sources in a second. Cool. Yeah, let's go through this. Okay, so to anyone who hasn't managed to see it yet, or who didn't attend the last session or watch the recording or anything yet, we're going to go to the assignment instructions in a second. But so there is a case scenario. It's a very vague one, but it's here nonetheless. That you need to refer to for all of the questions in the assignment. Okay, so you're very much putting yourself in the shoes, basically, of and playing a role as a research assistant. To create, some kind of study at a non-governmental organization that helps to provide support to school pupils who are struggling with bullying. Okay, so that is literally, and this is the exact wording on the slide of the case, but that is essentially what it is, all right? So you'll see the questions will center very much around research methodology and how you would come up with a kind of project, and the questions are all aligned to that kind of thinking. And so, yeah, before I hop over to the questions, it's just really important to remember a couple of things here, right? So this mythical study that it doesn't exist, is focusing on school pupils, right? So that means that they are underage people. So there are going to be things to consider with that, particularly for question 2. And yeah, obviously and it's very vague. So you're just struggling with the effects of bullying. Okay, so depending on the question, you can define this in various ways that may help you answer the questions. Okay, let me hop over to those instructions. Has anyone started this assignment yet? Cool, sounds like it. Okay, sorry, this thing is loading slowly. Come on, man, load, really? Sorry, guys. There we go. Computer is struggling with performance anxiety today. Okay. Cool. People have started. That's lovely. You're going to start soon. Cool. Yeah. So the 6th of September is sneaking up on us. I think it's about 2-ish weeks now. So yeah, we're getting there. So definitely, absolutely, please do start this assignment, following this session and get it started because, there are quite a few questions and depending on the pace that you work at, it can take quite some time to finish. Okay. I'm just checking if there are any questions in the chat before we get started. Alrighty, okay. Cool, there's the case scenario. So again, just keeping in mind, the purpose is to come up with some sort of intervention / study that deals with the effects of bullying at school. Okay. So question 1. You will see on this special PDF that I have here that I have annotated the page numbers of your textbook to which you will find the answers on. So yeah, I just tried, I want to give you guys as much of a leg up on this as possible. And literally every answer to these questions is in the textbook. Okay. So you only need to use additional sources when specifically asked for them in these questions. Okay. It's not a requirement. And because it's not a specific requirement, as an overall thing for the assessment, it means that it won't be on the rubric unless it's prescribed. So yeah, basically we're going to follow the instructions of the question. If it tells you to use other sources, then do so. Okay. Okay. So question 1.1, discuss properties that should be considered when undertaking a scientific research project as specified in the case scenario and explain their applicability to the case scenario. Okay, so two main things happening for 20 marks here, okay? You need to identify these properties of scientific research and you need to apply them to the case scenario. Okay, so for each property that you acquire, I literally can't just give you the answers, guys. So like what I'm doing to help you as much as possible is those page numbers, okay? But yeah, so for each property that you identify, you must apply it to the research scenario. You provide a definition and cite the textbook for that, and then you apply it. So you explain how it would work through this scenario, okay? Yeah, 20 marks, and it's divided up into the amount of the properties that they are. Okay, go see your textbook. And also I have slides on this somewhere that I will be uploading. Okay. And yeah, so you'll basically see that you'll get a mark or two just for identifying the correct thing, and then a couple of marks for that application per property. Okay, so that's how that will be broken down there. Okay, so the next question, so 500 to 600 words. Okay, so yeah, please do stick within this word count limit for each question, and please do provide the word counts for each question in your answers. Yeah, so you're not asked to write an essay here, so you can absolutely use like little headings or numbers. Yeah, as long as you can use headings or numbers for the properties, but please do write in full sentences and, create a proper little argument when you are doing the explanation. Cool. Lovely. Okay, so question 1.2, the lead researcher has informed you that he wishes to develop a theory that will inform the interventions employed to address the effects of school bullying. Okay, briefly discuss the process of theory development. Okay, so theory development is addressed on pages 18 and 19. I think there are three main kind of properties and important things that you should mention in this answer, and obviously applying them to the situation. Okay. Anyone maybe remember some of the things that happen with theory development? Everyone flipping through their textbooks very quickly. Okay, so this one's for 10 marks. Judge that by, how much information you give for 10 marks. 300 words is roughly half a page. So yeah, a fair amount of information that you must include in there, okay? Well done, Anita. Those are, two of the main things. Okay, so you'd need to identify and then explain those processes. There you go. Good job. Righty, teamwork. Lovely. Follow along in the chat, guys. Okay. Right, so that's another 10 marks. Then question 1.3, lead researcher at the NGO wishes to better understand how best to intervene with school bullying. Okay, which research approach is best suited to a study of this nature? Provide a clear motivation for your answer. Okay, I will come right out and tell you that there is no wrong answer here, but there are incorrect motivations, right? Okay, so this really depends on how you've imagined this scenario. Absolutely, it depends on how you're approaching it, whatever thing you choose, okay? So yeah, when I first looked at the scenario, obviously qualitative things popped into my mind. I was like, oh, we can interview parents and things to see, just things started happening in my mind. But yeah, it's really, obviously, you could do quantitative things and you could do mixed methods things. It's all about how you explain why that approach would be suited for this study. Okay. What could give you a clue as well as to what's necessary is the word intervene. So it means it would be a type of intervention study. Okay, and those usually need to be based on quite a lot of evidence. Yeah, so in terms of the case study, it's very much your perception of the case study. That's why it's so vague. It just says a study to address bullying. It could really, any aspect of bullying you could hone in on, that's completely up to you. Yeah. So yeah, you're going to give your arguments and you'll base your arguments obviously on the key concepts of each approach, right? Yes, and you must reference your textbook for this. You are never, you can always use extra sources. You're never prohibited from using extra sources, but it's not specifically stated in these questions. So, but you do have to cite your textbook. Okay. So it's not your opinion because you're basing why it's suitable on the knowledge that you have about the approach. Okay, so that's the facts backing it up is what needs to be referenced. Okay, will extra sources boost our marks? Good question. Look, using extra sources often demonstrates a broader understanding of the topic or even a more focused understanding of the topic at hand. And in this case, if you're wanting to zero in on like a specific aspect of bullying or whatever, then providing an article to explain that context would be very useful to you. But yeah, if you're just keeping it as very broad strokes like it's given to you, it's not necessary. So as long as you are providing the information that you need to provide, you will get the marks for it in this. Okay, there'll be a memo. That's why there's no rubric given to you, because I'll get a memo. And so there'll be marks allocated for specific points made. It's not like a qualitative rubric for an essay. Yes, please do apply the case scenario in each question. Okay. Often, especially with the questions that have quite a high mark allocation, there'll be a mark or two even attributed to your application of the case study. Okay, so you're not just regurgitating the textbook, you're stating the information from the textbook, referencing it, and then applying it in this situation. Righty. Okay, so I also want to highlight here for now, for each assessment going forward in this module, is, and that's why I put here called quantum mixed, is when we use the word research approach, this is what we're referring to: qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methodologies. Okay, and then if you say we ask you for research types, then that's referring to something else, and that's referring to exploratory, explanatory, correlative, the types of research. Okay, so just so that distinction is there, I'll mention it again in each other NSS we have, and again before your exam. Just so that's clear. There was some confusion in that in previous years, but your textbook, the language is aligned, so it's all fine. Okay, you don't need to reference examples that you give for the case scenario because the case scenario is given to you. Okay, so you don't need to reference the question paper. We need to reference the facts that are backing up your explanation. Cool, great questions so far. Keep them coming. Okay, question 1.4. Briefly describe the steps in scientific research approach selected in question 1.3. Okay, so how many, pop quiz, how many steps in the scientific research approach are there? In general? They are all in your textbook. Yeah, Anita, so there's 9 or 10 depending on if you separate sampling and sampling method. Okay. But yeah, and they very much follow a specific process from generating a topic all the way through to producing the results. Okay. I think I did have, those of you who have done INRS already, you'll have slides from me, especially on this. But you'll see I'll be adding some of the sets of slides that I've got with this content to more resources, just to stoke your, kind of guide you in terms of what you need to answer for this type of thing. But obviously, please, you have to read the textbook and cite that. Okay. Okay, so 15 marks. You'll get a mark per correct step. Okay, and then there are, I think it was last year, it was 2 marks for getting them in the right order. And then 2 marks for describing the step. Yeah. So yeah, don't just give a list from 1 to 10 of the names of the things, then you'll only get half the marks. You need to describe them as well, and then in that description, reference the textbook. Okay, so yeah, again, how you structure these short answer questions is up to you. It's really nice and easy for marking if you just discuss each step in a little paragraph. So yeah, but if you want to combine it into one long paragraph, that's up to you guys. But please, name it and then give the explanation straight away. Yeah, don't separate the explanations and get them mixed up. Okay. Yeah, 450 to 500 words. It's really more than enough words for this. Okay. Cool. And it has not told you to apply the case study in this question, so you technically don't have to. Yeah, you're just really naming the steps in the research process and explaining them or describing them. Okay, and that is question 1 for a total of 50 marks. Are there any more questions around question 1 before we tackle question 2, which is a bit different? No questions at this stage? All right. There we go. And naming the steps, do we paraphrase or state per textbook? Yeah, when you are naming, when you're identifying something, use the exact words that are used in the textbook for the name of each of the steps, okay? Yeah, it is really straightforward. What comes down to getting full marks, and I have actually I think 2 people got full marks for this assignment last year. So it's possible, really, because it's like a tick box exercise of an assignment. Just make sure that you're including those explanations where they're asked for. That's really usually where marks fall out in this one. No, you don't need to put especially like for something like the steps in the research process, you don't need to quote those because they're common knowledge names. You just, yeah, cite the textbook for that whole question. And you can kind of do that once off. You don't need to provide an in-text citation per like couple of sentences, right? You can just put a line at the top of that question saying the following steps in the scientific research process according to blah, 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 authors, and then you go from there on, and then it covers that whole question, okay? 1.4, can you use bullets? Yes, you can use, and even numbering would be good because it is a numbered, sequenced, set of steps, and they do follow a particular order, so make sure to get that right as well. Okay, cool. Awesome sauce. Let's go to question 2. Okay, question 2 is all about ethics. So this is why, I spent quite a lot of time on ethics in a previous collab. And yeah, there are a bunch of sources that you will have access to after this, for this as well. Because there are 3 questions here, which will comprise the rest of the 50 marks for your assignment. Okay, question 2.1, 20 marks, then 20 marks again, and then 10 marks at the end. Okay, so these questions are actually also very formulaic in the way that you need to answer them because there's a certain number of principles or things that you need to consider in each question. So yeah, make sure that you're adhering to that. So let's go through them. Okay. So question 2.1 with reference to the case scenario above. So the same scenario we've been using for question 1. Identify and explain. Okay. Make sure to do both of those things. The ethical principles that need to be considered when undertaking a research project of this nature. Okay, does anyone remember from our previous collab on ethics, how many ethical principles are there? Your textbook lays them out in a really lovely way. So it's a gorgeous resource for this. Anyone? Ethical principles ringing a bell? There are 6. People often forget about the rights of the participants because it's kind of implied throughout the rest of them, but it technically does count as a 6th principle. Cool. Okay, so yeah, 20 marks. That is how you'll probably be given for 12, 16. Yeah. So you'll be given however many marks that is allocated on the memo per principle that is applied. Okay, but you'll first of all get at least 2 or probably 3 marks for just identifying and then explaining the correct principles. And then you'll get another probably 2 marks per principle for applying that principle to the scenario. Yeah, so relating to the scenario is vital for the whole of question 2. Okay, so yeah, please make sure you're doing that. Okay, so literally, so you'll state the name of the principle, so autonomy, whatever, and then you provide a definition in your own words from the textbook, and then you explain the significance of that principle and you relate it to the scenario. Okay, so remember, like you were mentioned, I think it was Anita or someone who commented earlier that, children, it's a vulnerable population. So, you know, that's something that you're definitely going to be thinking about in this question. Subheadings are absolutely fine. It's not an essay question. And yeah, I think the best way to format this answer will be just by naming the principle as a subheading and then answering that bit for that and so on, rather than trying to kind of blend everything together. Yeah, so literally name, describe, and explain and apply. Yeah, absolutely much easier. Just approach it in the systematic, formulaic way. That is your ticket to good marks for this assignment. Okay. So question 2.2 builds on the previous question. Okay, so given the nature of the topic being investigated, discuss any 10, so they're telling you how many, 10 ethical considerations that need to be foregrounded in this research project. Provide detailed explanations for your answer. Okay, so what they mean by detailed explanations is obviously explain what the consideration that you're speaking about is and also apply it to the situation. Okay, yeah, absolutely. This assignment really is straightforward. It's a straightforward test of knowledge. Well, application of knowledge, really. Easy peasy. You can do this in your sleep, guys. Okay, just yeah, don't underestimate the time it may take to complete, depending on your working pace. Okay. Yeah, so you will find. I think there's more than 10 in your textbook, so you pick the 10 most applicable in your research project that you've been thinking about with this assignment, and you name them, explain them, apply them to the scenario. Okay, so can someone maybe name a couple of them in the chat so I know you're on the right track? What is the difference between an ethical principle and ethical consideration? Really just a semantic difference. Yeah, informed consent, voluntary participation, ethical review is a consideration. Yeah, whereas principles are things like beneficence, malfeasance, autonomy, justice. Okay, so they're broad, overarching principles, or even think of them as values that we should be striving towards. And then considerations are more practically what are the things you need to do in order to achieve those principles or avoid those things like maleficence. Okay. Yeah, deception is another one. Confidentiality, anonymity. Good job. Yeah, so all of them are there in your textbook, as are the explanations for them. So this is literally like a free 20 marks, to be honest, because you will get 2 marks per correctly identified and contextualized consideration. And yeah, you can present those just kind of as an annotated list. So yeah, so little subheading and then the explanation. Excellent. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think about, but I really like this textbook that you got this year. It's nice and accessible. Okay, then question 2.3 really rounds off the third kind of step that you need to go through when, thinking about ethics for a research project, is now specifically considering the context. Discuss the responsibilities of the researcher in ensuring the well-being of the research participants and also the organizations that may be involved in the process. Okay, so you've already been told in the case scenario that there's an NGO involved, and obviously there would be a school or a few schools involved, right? Depending on how large your scope is for this. Okay, so they need to be considered as agents, as players in the game, and then also, very importantly, the participants as well. Okay, so if you can see, this is a straight application question. Okay, what responsibilities would you as the researcher have to ensure that your participants and or the organizations involved do not come to any harm? Okay, harm, remember, and do go back and watch that previous collab if you haven't yet. We had quite a good discussion on this. Harm can be either physical or psychological, emotional. Okay, it doesn't have to be that obvious. In terms of organizations, what do you guys think harm might be characterized by with organizations or institutions? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, closing down would be a significant consequence of maybe reputation being damaged. So good teamwork on the chat there, guys. Yeah, reputation is a huge one. It's actually something that often prevents gatekeepers, so the people in charge of institutions, from granting access to researchers. Even if you profess that it will be kept completely anonymous and you as the researcher are the only person that will know the identity of the organization, they're still like, no, absolutely not. The answers could damage our reputation. And you'll find later in your studies, especially at honors level, this is something you really have to grapple with. Even especially universities, private universities. Varsity College is one we butt heads with National every year for honors projects because they don't want students to only draw from Varsity College students as a sample. They want it to be broad, like across different institutions, just in case there's an unfavorable result, you know. And I suppose, you know, from a business model, obviously it does make sense. Organizations got to protect their reputations. Yeah. So absolutely, there's that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. So yeah, 10 marks. So obviously it's less here. You got 250 to 300 words. And yeah, you need to be, it doesn't tell you how many responsibilities there are, but it's very much based on the considerations you've given in the previous questions. So if you've stated something like confidentiality, you know, no deception, what else did we put here? Yeah, those kinds of things. If you stated, oh, informed consent, absolutely. So if you've stated those things, you now, in this question, need to say, well, it's the responsibility of the researcher to ensure that the participants' identities are never leaked, etc. Yeah. And yeah, really just put yourself in the shoes of the researcher in this situation and then phrase your answers from that perspective of how the researcher needs to prevent bad things from happening. As a general educational moment, can anyone maybe provide the difference between confidentiality and anonymity for me? There is a difference. Take a guess at it, maybe like how they would be different in a situation. Anonymity, right? Yeah. I often stumble over these words, particularly when I'm teaching. It's hilarious. If I'm doing a session, like my live sessions on campus, I literally, like, I derp much less. There's something about knowing that you're being surveyed with the recording that makes my brain buffer, I swear. Okay, let's look at this. So anonymity means you don't know who the participants are, yes, but confidentiality means that you as the researcher know who they are, but then you remove identifying information from your research reports. Excellent, couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, same thing running through the next answers. Yes, and so true anonymity you can only achieve if even you as the researcher don't know the identity of the participants. So yeah, exactly, they remain anonymous. Just think about the how you would use the words in real life, and then the difference becomes clear. So I put the question to you guys, and yeah, I'd like everyone to just pop a yes or a no, or it depends or something in the chat. Is true anonymity possible in qualitative research? Interesting. Can I get some more responses? Yeah, there's 34 people in the room and I've only got like 10 responses. Come on, guys, wake up. Yeah, good. My next question was why, right? So, okay, Cameron, so you've said that you think it is possible because you can hear their whole life story without knowing who they are. Question, how do you hear their story without knowing who they are? If you think methodologically, how do we gather data qualitatively? Also think about the process of consent. Yeah, I'll take your point for discussion. Technology these days, especially now AI, you can hide identity relatively easily. Okay, so I'll throw another fork in the bag of spoons here. So think about this as well. If someone's completely anonymous in this instance, how do you know that they fit your sampling criteria? Qualitative research, we very more often than not sample purposively, right? So that means you have very specific criteria that your participants need to meet. And this is because often qualitative research is very context dependent. So let's say I'm looking for responses from, I'm doing a neuropsychology topic. I want to see the relationship between attachment and ADHD. And I qualitatively, interestingly enough, want to sample neuropsychologists and speak to them about the research they've done in these fields. So, as a researcher, how would I know if I use technology and all of this anonymous stuff? How do I know that they are who they say that they are when they sign up? Yeah, so this is an interesting nibble for thought, right? Because, and especially, so if I had asked this question to a group of students 20 years ago, the answer would have been absolutely not, because this technology didn't exist. The way that you gathered qualitative data was by literally sitting opposite someone and speaking to them, right? So yeah, there would be at least some aspects of their identity that you'd know. And yeah, that's that. But yeah, I mean, tech and things have thrown a little bit of a spanner in the works, and it's interesting. It is very interesting, and I think it's something that researchers are really actually grappling with quite a lot at the moment. Um, yeah, so I think what you guys have settled on is quite good. Technically, maybe it may be possible, but is it necessary? Is also the question. And yeah, you'd have to jump through numerous hoops to get it to do its thing, right? There's possibly the idea, the problem of access to technology. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this stuff is always largely dependent on the study. Yeah, and the participants. But this is why we have confidentiality, right? So remember, if you sign an informed consent form that explicitly, and I'll upload a template of an informed consent form for you guys so that you can see it. Might aid in this thinking a bit more. It explicitly states, and you're informed that your identity will be kept confidential, strictly confidential. No one will ever find out who you are. You know, your name, everything, any identifying detail. So anything to do with gender, location, anything will be removed. And then the researcher signing that makes that a legal responsibility. Okay. So you can and should trust that researchers would obviously adhere to that. And also, like, researchers have literally nothing to gain by violating ethical principles. In fact, what they have to gain is jail time. So it's a fairly safe bet, as long as you can hold researchers accountable for that confidentiality. Yeah, always bear in mind that process of informed consent. It's what's really, really interesting and particularly important in qualitative research. And yeah, I mean, definitely methodology. So think about an instance where you're doing a case study on one person. It certainly isn't possible then, because you need to know that person to do whatever case study you're doing on them for whatever reason. It does happen. People sometimes do a multiple case study where they only have 3 participants. Yeah. But yeah, good thinking, guys. Good discussion. I'm glad, because it's showing that you are understanding these base principles behind this stuff. And yes, look, it's actually something also just to consider, that getting participants to participate in your research is a nightmare, because people are paranoid about data safety and things. Data safety is also something that is a consideration. Okay, that's something that researchers have to disclose. Exactly how are you storing these interview recordings? How long are you storing them for? Where are you storing them? You know, who has access to them, all of this stuff, because yeah, it's a different story. It's not like 20, 30 years ago where someone just had a notebook with the stuff in it, right? Yeah. Yeah, so the only place, and this is for any, because you literally always have to ensure confidentiality, is the only place the name appears is on that informed consent document. And so it's vital that that document is kept secret and then destroyed when the research is complete, or kept in a vault for however many years. Different institutions have different rules for these kinds of things. Yeah, so you do have an ethical responsibility to make your results available to your participants, right? So that means, sending them your thesis if they want to see it, sending them the published article. Yeah, that's that. Every participant has the right to see the product of their participation. And also bear in mind that the raw data of an interview doesn't wholly appear in an article, for instance. You know, you may include a couple of quotes here and there, but then that's kept completely confidential. You use pseudonyms for participants, and yeah, you don't give away identity. That's just vital for that. Yeah, peace of mind, absolutely. Because if they're seeing the final product and they can see that they indeed were kept confidential, then that's, yeah, that helps there. It's a promise of transparency, really, and that's what's important with that. Awesome. We are nearing the end of our session. Does anyone have any questions, anything to do with the assignments or the content? Yeah, what's going on? How are we feeling about the research process? Is anyone like interested in research now? I mean, we're only halfway-ish through the module. Not even. Thanks. It's not for everyone, to be fair. Yeah, look, it's a difficult module. It is. We'll come out and say that immediately. Any module to do with research is a difficult one. And yes, there's a little bit of statistics at the end. But I promise you that the way that I will explain these things should help, because I try to demystify it as much as possible. Yeah, but it will be fine, I promise, okay? And it's really with the stats that comes down to practice at the end of the day as well. So always allow yourself time to prep for this exam in particular, okay? But yeah, you only need to think about that in a couple weeks' time at least. For now, focus on doing this excellently easy assignment so that you can enter the exam with the best marks possible. Cool. Oh, thank you. That's great. All right. Oh, also, yeah, I don't know, and depending, I know some of you do like to work far and ahead kind of thing. So if any of you do start working through that stats workbook that you've got and you come across any errors, please let me know as soon as possible. Okay, there were a couple that we had to report last year, and the earlier we find them, the better. Okay, but yeah, we will get there in the weeks to come. Alrighty, thanks so much, guys. If there are any more burning questions, shoot me an email and I'll respond to that. But otherwise, good luck, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time.